in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome everybody to our WAN-IFRA webinar series. I'm Nicole Frankenhauser and I'm a member of WAN-IFRA's Global Advisory Team, the consulting division of WAN-IFRA based in Frankfurt, Germany. Joining me here in Frankfurt today is your webinar host, Steffen Damborg. We are excited to bring to you today a webinar highlighting Steffen's expertise as a digital transformation specialist. And he brings some very relevant cases that will give you insight as to how leading newsrooms around the world are using their data. As always, we invite the audience to join us in the discussion. Once Steffen concludes his presentation, we will begin our question and answer session. Please note that you can submit your questions at any time during the webinar. To do so, please find at the bottom right of your control panel a box that is labeled questions. Please type in your inquiries, and after Steffen concludes his presentation, we will begin the Q&A round. A little bit more about Steffen. He has 10 years of experience in all aspects of running an online business in the media industry. He is a former digital director and chief development officer at the leading Danish publisher JP Politikenshus, and is currently focusing on digital transformation for global media organizations, accrued from his knowledge of working extensively in the Scandinavian market. These are the topics that Steffen will be addressing in the next hour: how algorithms can reduce churn on paid subscriptions, learnings from applying your data strategy into content that converts, and how machine learning increases your traffic by targeting users with recommendations and related articles. And this webinar is a sneak peek of Steffen's presentation at Digital Media Asia 2017, which will be taking place the 31st of October through the 2nd of November in Singapore. Don't forget to sign up to this energizing event with world-class speakers and powerful networking. Steffen will be offering a presentation on beyond paid journalism, big data in today's newsrooms, as well as offering a masterclass to kickstart the event on day one called Paid Content Business Models. Check out the website here for more information and how to register. And now, without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce you to Steffen Damborg, who will be presenting on applying big data in your newsroom. Steffen, we are ready to hear from you. Take it away.
Thank you, Nicole, for your kind introduction, and good morning, everybody, even though I know it's the afternoon in Asia right now, but I'm really pleased that so many people have found the time to join me on this session. I will continue with my slides. As Nicole said, we will be talking about big data today and how it could be applied in the newsroom. The agenda for today is how we can combine insights from small big data, what are the editorial trends that we see, how can we use personalization and digital subscriptions. Thank you. We have seen a lot of focus on what the big media groups are doing in recent years. Much focus has been on the New York Times, for instance, and the innovation model and the innovation report. But the case is that most publishers, they have difficulties replicating the business models of the global news brands. So most publishers have to look into finding their own path into the digital age. I think that it is very important that we have some technical issues here. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, but we are just trying to solve a technical problem. So sorry for the inconvenience. Now we should be ready to continue. As I told you, that there's been a much focus on the big global brands such as the New York Times, the Financial Times, and Washington Post. But we really need to look for business models that applies for small and medium-sized publishers as well. And one place to look for that is actually in Northern Europe. If we look at the index of digital matureness, we see that the Scandinavian countries, the Netherlands and Belgium, are some of the most mature when it comes to digitization. And this means that what you see in this region is now you might very well be seeing in your own regions in the coming years. So today I will look at some of the global brands, but I will also bring you some cases from those smaller markets in Northern Europe. Let us start with the big data and small data and how you can use that in your newsroom. Big data, you know, it's a buzzword these days, and I tend to use it myself all too much. But it's really about having so much data that it's that you can't just put it into the computer and start crunching the data. On the other hand, you have small data. Small data is data that is small enough for human comprehension. And that could, for instance, be data you gather from focus group interviews, etc. What we have seen in Denmark and a case from Belgium is that when you start to combine those two kinds of data, we call it method triangulation, you actually gain a lot of new insights. First, I will look at the case from Denmark. It's JP. I used to be the chief development officer of this Danish morning paper. It has a circulation of close to 100,000 daily copies, and there are close to 500 employees in this group. And a few years ago, JP was introducing the paid content business model, and I will talk you through how we approached this new business model. We started by giving the newsroom access to real-time usage dashboards, measuring engagement time, the social media engagement and traffic sources. At the same time, we gave the editors a dashboard that gave them the possibility of doing the space management of their of the front page of the newspaper, and it also supported the double loop learning of the journalists. They could actually see what content was gaining engagement and what content pieces did not in real time. That was new for all at that time. Also, we used heat maps to determining how we could allocate the pixels between paid content and the free content, and also where to put the advertisement, and we followed the social media, the Facebook, Twitter, and the Instagram on big screens, but also on the personal screens on each individual journalist. All of those things that we have seen here, they are very mature technologies today. They build on big data, but you can buy them off the shelves from a lot of vendors. So it's actually easy to implement it. It only takes implementation of a script from a webmaster, and then then you're live with those kind of monitoring. But even though we gave our journalists and editors those tools, we had difficulties in gaining the conversion rates that our peers were gaining in other markets. So we tried to look deeper into how our users and visitors were consuming our content. We used a peer learning approach in the newsroom so that the online specialists could educate the offline journalists in how to go about when you're producing content for the online, and how to prioritize content on the online homepage as opposed to printed publication. Then also we started to interview some of our high-frequent users while they were navigating on our websites. We gave them tasks. For instance, go to the homepage, navigate to the sports section, find this article, and we interviewed them during the process. We recorded eye movements, we recorded mouse movements, and there we gained a lot of insights on the user experience and the user interface of our website, and where people were bouncing. Also, we had focus groups where we discussed what is premium content for our most frequent users, and for some of our subscribers of the paid printed products. And also we discussed with these user groups the willingness to pay for content online. And with all these informations, we built a new model where we looked at the product and the customer satisfaction, and how we could increase loyalty and reduce churn on the digital platforms. And we went back to the innovation lab, so to speak, and tried to redesign our paid content offering in according to the input we gain from our users. So this is more a customer-centric approach to news production than what you traditionally see in the newspaper industry. And the results of this is that we managed to build new editorial tools for monitoring individual content units and to monitor the conversion rates. We succeeded in a cultural change towards a more agile and customer-centric approach. And also we improved the space management between the free and the paid. So actually there was a lot of gains in this process. Another case is from Belgium. As I mentioned, they are also very high on the digital matureness scale. And this is a project done by Mediahus, Twibe, the Google News Initiative, and the Leiden University. They propose a new approach to engagement. They say that their theory or methodology was that it isn't only the time spent, the number of page views per session, and the number of minutes spent per session that equals engagement. You also have to look at whether people have a positive effect towards the things you're producing and presenting to them. And of course, if you have the right engagement, your revenues go up. So what they did, they conducted a scientific research study for a full academic year, They invited people in to the lab. Um, uh, they measured pulse, eye movements, skin conductance, body temperature when people were reading the content of a newspaper, of an e-paper replica of the newspaper of this media company. And they also had a live panel of 60 people that was 200 people that was rating each article in the e-paper. Um, and and what they did was that they asked people how they would rate the content, and they more importantly asked, why do you rate the content as you do? Was it because it was funny? Was it useful? Did it touch you? Or did it bring you knowledge to you? Um, and with the data from the live panel and from the laboratory, they were able to make a new predictive model where they could see the net promoter score of tomorrow's newspaper. They could, of course, see the reading time, but they could also start to predict um, how much engagement your not yet published e-paper would create, and this gives the editorial newsroom the possibility of learning and adjusting tomorrow's publication before you actually put it to print. So this is a very interesting study. What they found was that not only online but also in the printed paper and in the e-paper, you see the sparkling articles are the ones that boost the positive effect of your product. They could see what kind of articles that was overperforming or performing in accordance to their predictive model. So what this study gave this publishing company was new insights on how to curate tomorrow's newspaper, how to curate the e-paper, and you can actually predict pretty accurately how much time people will use consuming your tomorrow's product. Yeah. So what we know now is that engagement affects loyalty, and we know that the higher the engagement, the higher the probability that you will see people return to your website or to your e-paper. And we know that the high frequent news outlet visitors, they are the ones with the highest propensity of becoming a paying customer. So now I will ask you rhetorically, do you know how satisfied your customers are today? I just traveled from Denmark to Frankfurt here in Germany, and on my way, I met some of these stands where that measures my satisfaction. I met it at the railway station. I met it at the airports, but as a publisher, you can also use measurements like this actually to gain real-time insights on how satisfied your customers are. This is a screen dump from NBC, and they are using emotes for evaluating the quality of their content. And what they actually saw when using these emotes was that it increased their visitors' engagement on the social platforms, and also it revealed the preferences of each visitor visiting the site. And that gave NBC the possibility of personalized targeting the audience. You see down left, you see 4 examples of articles that is personalized to one individual consumer. And also what we saw was that that emotes, they rate 20 times the comments rate and 10 times the recommendation rate when it comes to social interaction. So actually you see a higher engagement with your company when you use this very simple technique to evaluate your content. So it's not only for airports and railway stations, you can actually do this as a publisher, and it's very easy. Let me turn to machine learning and personalization. A few years ago, Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, bought the Washington Post, and I fell over this very interesting case because at Amazon they have used huge resources in making a predictive e-commerce recommendation engine. They called it Clavis, and what Jeff Bezos wanted to do was to apply this to a newspaper. He said, "Well, if it works in e-commerce, why shouldn't it work in publishing?" So what they did was that they implemented the Clavis technology at the Washington Post. They built recommendation modules. They looked at segment-based personalization. They looked at newspaper recommendations, etc. And what you saw on the Washington Post website, you saw these read more recommendations after the end of each article, delivered by Clavis. We saw new boxes also delivered by Clavis technology when people were not engaging with content. As you see here at the bottom of this slide, are you looking for something else? This is a message sent to people that did not engage with this particular story. So in this way, Washington Post built a recommendation engine as we normally see done by the large e-commerce companies. And when we looked at the results, they're actually amazing. We saw that the click rates went from, the click-through rates went from 3% up to 18% in a period of just 2 years. It's actually a 600% increase in your click-through rates on your website. So there is a huge potential in this technology, and we can see from the graph that the machine is still learning. It's not flattening out. So there is yet potential to harvest. Also, we see some of the same technologies applied in the Nordic countries by smaller publishers. This is a case from Schibsted and Swedish publisher SvD. They used a machine learning algorithm for editing the front page of the website. So the only thing the editor had to make of decisions was how important is the story and what should be the lifetime of the story. The rest of the space management of the front page was done by an algorithm. And when they split tested the algorithm with the manpower based space management, the algorithm outperformed the humans. They did the same with personalized editorial newsletters. and they curated individual newsletters for users out of their previous interaction history. And also when it came to the opening rates of the computer curated newsletters towards the personal, the manual curated, you see that the personalized, they outperformed the manually curated by far. So this is another example of how you can use machine learning in your newsroom to maximize the engagement of your audience. Let me turn to some of the trends in storytelling, because in order to have success with your machine learning, you have to build good content. And I would like to touch briefly upon some of the trends we see in online storytelling. We see a shift from non-linear to more linear storytelling, and this is of course because more and more of news consumption is being consumed on mobile phones, and non-linear storytelling is very difficult to present on small screens. A very good example on how this could be thought is this famous story from the New York Times called "The Snowfall." It's a Pulitzer Prize-winning article. To the right, you see the mobile version of this story, and to the left you see the desktop version. And as you can see, the mobile version is linear in its thinking. You see multimedia put in a linear way. You see a more minimalistic design that you usually see on digital news outlets. And this is all important steps in optimizing the mobile user experience, because the screens are so small. Also, you see that the publishers that are building their business models on paid subscriptions, they are trying to create more newsfeed without yelling breaking, without using the breaking colors, without doing clickbaiting on their front pages, because that creates negative effects. Also, we see a lot of new multimedia trends. I will give you some examples of very simple tools that all journalists can be using for adding quality to their articles. This is, for instance, an expandable fact box for mobile. Another one here is audio in the linear flow of the article. And this one is embedded video in the linear flow of the mobile article. And you see templates for important journalistic themes. This is more of a non-linear template for desktop. This is regarding the election of the president in the United States, but where you can really see that you use a lot of different components to make an intriguing environment for your theme and your topic. Also, you see interactive editorial timeline tools. You see sliders where you can show before and after pictures. And you see more content tagging, where you can more easily use related articles. You can attach infographics to your articles. It's good for your search engine optimization and for the editorial research in the newsrooms. So these are all trends you see in digital publishing, and trends that I will go more into depth with when I come to Singapore for the masterclass. Also, I would like to touch upon some few trends in digital publishing and what we see when publishers are going from an ad-based business model to a paid content business model. We see that a huge change in space management. For instance, this is the New York Times, where you see that most of their ad space is allocated for their own paid content offering, and you don't see this forest of different commercial display ads from a huge variety of different vendors. You see actually a more focused advertisement of your own product. This is one way to convert subscribers to your digital content offering. Also, you see new titles appearing in the newsroom. This is an example from Süddeutsche Zeitung in Germany, where you see a new job title as a digital text marketing editor. This is the editor that decides what content is good enough to be part of the premium paid content pool. Also, you see the rise of news sections within the website. This is from JP in Denmark. We see this premium section where you have a more exclusive look and feel. There's some higher focus on aesthetics. There are no or only high-end commercials, and you're more in a lean-back mode with a reduced complexity and white space. This is a theme of Vladimir Putin, but you see a lot of those cases focusing on long narratives, review themes, multimedia productions, comments and editorials, and so forth. So this is a new trend that you try to create a more unique environment for your paid content. Also, we see that the effect of changing strategy away from clickbait and from breaking news approach to news publishing, you actually see a jump in subscriptions. This is the times that saw a sales jump when they changed their focus from newsfeed to more in-depth journalism. Also, we see better statistics for the editors, with more focus on what kind of content is converting and how to where to put it on the front page and where to put it when it comes to related articles. So this is one of the latest improvements we see, and we see also a lot of vendors having focus on this when they present their analytics offerings to publishers. And we see, for instance, that you can now, with these analytics tools, you can start differentiating and analyzing between registered users, subscribers, and flybys on your website in order to gain more insights on what content really engages and converts to paying customers. And the effects, you can actually see that year over year, you see huge increases in the number of paid digital subscriptions. This is from the US, where you see the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times also, they have very decent growth rates year over year. But those are, as I mentioned when at the start of this presentation, those are the global brands. But actually, when we look at more small and medium-sized publishers in the Nordics, this is a case from Norway and Sweden, from Schibsted. You also there see a substantial growth in digital subscriptions. We see a year-over-year growth of 35% in the Norwegian and Swedish market. And that's approximately 10% of the daily visitors that are paying for content right now. And I think that we will see continuing growth in the coming years of 20 to 30% year over year in that aspect also. So that brings me to some takeaways from this session. It's important that you combine big data and small data, because it often gives you new and valuable insights. Engagement is more than page views. It has also to do with the positive evaluation and the positive effect. You really need to deliver big data tools to your editorial team, because it facilitates a double loop learning, and it gives the individual journalist the possibility of making decisions not only from his or her gut feeling, but from metrics and from facts. And then we see that it is the high frequent usage that drives the digital subscriptions. So you really need to really need to go from the breaking news and the clickbait mode to a more quality perspective on your content. And unfortunately, there's no one size fits all. Each publisher has to tailor its own business model, taking into regard the local market situation, the matureness, the digital matureness of the company, the culture in the newsroom, etc. So this is an important process to start, but you have to find your own path as a publisher. And also, this research shows that if you have limited resources, and of course most publishers have very limited resources, well, you can compensate that with using vendors or making alliances with universities to get more knowledge into your own organization. So this was my sneak preview to what I will be talking about in Singapore. Hope to see you all there, and back to you, Nicole.
Wow, thanks so much, Steffen. Those were some fascinating cases, and it sounds as though publishers are getting really, really serious about understanding user and reader behavior. I especially like the case with the emojis from NBC. I think we should all start using emojis. And now is our question and answer round. Wow, we have a lot of questions. We have a really large audience today. So want to get started. I'll go first with something I wrote down during the presentation. Big tech companies are now trying to deliver subscription technology. Facebook is now engaging with publishers for partnership cooperation. Amazon's been doing it for a while. Should we build our own in-house subscription service as publishers, or rely on GAFA?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Nicole, and an important one as well. I think it's important to take this discussion for each and every publisher. Do we want to build our own ecosystem, or do we want to rely on external partners? If we rely on external partners, we have seen, for instance, Google changing the rules of the game when it comes to the reach on social platform. If we rely on some of the big tech companies for our subscription models as well, we risk that the rules of the game are not the same tomorrow as they are today. So I would advise that we try to build those ecosystems ourselves. But also we have to take into account who's going to own the data of our customers, what commission will you have to pay if you make a deal with the external vendor, and etc. So you need to conduct a careful analysis and then find your own the right answer for yourself.
Excellent. And we not only have questions, we also have comments from the audience. We have one that says, very insightful presentation. So thank you, audience member, for that. Yeah, we have an audience question here, Steffen, so I'll get into that. Long form reading, breaking news have different effects on engagement and subscription, as you mentioned. Does that mean additional resources in the newsroom so they can serve both of these needs?
I mean, there are scarce resources in almost all newsrooms, and we are, as publishers, struggling to transform our publishing to the digital age. So there are limited resources. What I think is that maybe we will see a shift in how you use the resources in your newsroom. You lose less resources on the curation of the space management, of the editing process, and you use more resources on producing good content. So you let the machines to decide where to put your content. You let the machines decide how to curate your newsletters, how to curate your e-paper, and then you can invest all of your editorial resources in producing the best content for your audience.
Okay, great. And that's a question that segues into my next question, which deals with culture. So we talked a lot about technology in this presentation. You went over heat maps, algorithms, etc. But how do we go about with a cultural transition in the newsroom? That's what's really important here.
Yeah, it is, and there is this old saying says that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and of course this is a difficult transition. There is a lot of people in the newsrooms that has been working with the printed newspaper for a generation, and it's a difficult task to change the way and people work and their habits. But my experience is that when we actually give the journalists good tools and good insights, they are keen to learn and they are keen to use it when they can see that it actually generates more engagement in the audience. Also, when you create new KPIs, such as this article is the top converting paid content subscription story of the week. I mean, you see the prideness in also the more elderly journalist that has produced this content. So I really think that this is possible to educate and use peer learning in this process and create a new culture where you are more customer-centric, market-oriented, and metric-centric.
Yeah, when I visited some top newsrooms in the US last October, everybody had in their newsroom data and analytics screens all over. So it's great to see how your article's performing, and it gives you some satisfaction. And then we have another audience question. Subscription and paywall, is there an ideal balance? I think that's a good question.
There is no right or wrong to that answer, to that question. It's a very good question. I mean, we see publishers with a totally free business model, and we see publishers with almost a wall and no free content. And there is no right or wrong. You have to find your own way about. What we see in the US, we see a lot of the big news brands going from for the metered model, where you can read a few articles and then you have to pay. In the Northern Europe, we more see the freemium business model. I think it has to do with the market size. If you're in a small market, you really have to harvest more intensively on your audience. And there the freemium model is very good, because you can actually change the percentage of free and paid content on a daily basis. You can start by only allocating a smaller percentage of your website to paid content, and you can, as you gain customers, paying customers, you can build a larger premium content sections on your website.
Wow, thanks. And we're now getting flooded with questions, so we'll take just two more, and then we'll answer all the questions offline. You will all have Steffen's email address, so you can get in contact with him. We'll also send you a recording and takeaways email after this this webinar is over, and of course you'll be able to contact Steffen for the presentation. But we'll just go into the last two questions before we wrap up. What is the survival kit to get started? The minimum tools to have to start tracking what works best, higher interest and engagement?
Well, I think that I think that the easy way to start is to buy a publishing analytics tool.
Mm-hmm.
This way, you really get a good real-time insights on how your content is working, and from there, I would start interacting with my audience. I would really start, as I showed from the Danish case, invite your core users, your core customers into workshops, into focus group interviews, mm-hmm. to gain more insights on what engages them on the digital platforms. We have a long history of what is engaging people on the printed platform, but you really have to gain insights also on what is working on the digital. And this combination of small and big data, I think, should be your first step in creating your premium model.
Excellent. And last question before we go. Tech companies like Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and LinkedIn have teams to support clients. Just how much support and handholding can newsrooms expect from them? Not just in terms of talk and online training materials, but in terms of actual direct face-to-face content and customized guidance.
Yeah, I think, only a few years ago, it was kind of impossible to get in contact with Google and Facebook, mm-hmm. but today they are very keen on trying to help the publishers. They are our frenemies, as we used to say, still, but you can actually have a very good dialogue with the big tech companies today. This is my experience, but you just have to remember that there are no free lunches here. You're paying with your audience data when you interact with the big tech companies. So you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, excellent. Well, again, I'd like to thank Steffen for this insightful presentation, as our audience member said. I learned a lot. I think our audience did as well. There was a large group today, so I also want to thank the audience for joining us. And like I said, this is a sneak peek into Steffen's full presentation at Digital Media Asia, 31st of October through 2nd of November. So catch him there, and like I said earlier, we'll have his contact information available to you. I'll send a takeaways email later this week, and yeah, thank you so much, and we hope to see you for our next WAN-IFRA webinar. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.